We're sinking. Can you all please come?
And is everybody on board in good health otherwise?
Yeah, everybody's on board.
Nolan Wells, and maybe the last image before his death after that 4th of July boat trip with friends in Mississippi.
We will miss everything about him, from his quiet nature to the corny jokes, his gentle smile.
To be steadfast and trying to get to the truth of why Nolan Wells is dead.
Nolan Wells.
Nolan Wells.
Nolan Wells.
Nolan Wells.
Nolan Xavier Wells.
This video, obtained by TMZ, shows the back of a black man on a boat during a large party on July 4th. The man is wearing blue swim trunks, similar to this photo of Nolan Wells that was also taken that day 10 miles off of Mississippi's coast.
18-year-old Nolan Wells left for a 4th of July boat party. 2 days later, his body washed up on a remote Mississippi island. The friend group came home. His phone came home with them. He didn't. And more than 5 weeks later, after a leaked distress call, 2 autopsies, $100,000 in reward money, and a sealed grand jury file, nobody has been charged. The internet still cannot agree on what happened next. To understand why this case has lit the internet on fire, you have to start with the kid. Nolan Xavier Wells was 18. He was about 6'1", around 180 pounds. He was a college football player at Southwest Mississippi Community College and a graduate of Ocean Springs High on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. Friends and coaches describe him as popular, easygoing, and well-liked, the kind of teammate and classmate that everybody wanted in their group.
Rest in power, rest in paradise. If I could change matters, I would spare a life, 'cause lives matter as clearly nothing as dear as life. You have become a symbol in the spirit life. Rest in power, rest in paradise. If I could change matters, I would spare a life, 'cause lives matter as clearly nothing as dear as life.
His mother, Christine Wansley, works as a home healthcare nurse. His stepfather, Elmore Wansley, raised him alongside her.
Searchers believe they found the body of 18-year-old Nolan Xavier Wells after he headed out on a boat trip with friends for July 4th and never came back.
In every interview the family has done since the 4th of July, they describe Nolan as the kind of kid who had his life in front of him, not behind him. He was, by every account, a normal teenager who loved his phone. He was almost never separated from it. That detail is going to matter later. On the morning of July 4th, 2026, Independence Day, Nolan and a group of close friends gathered at a dock on the Mississippi mainland for what was supposed to be a relaxed day on the water off the Gulf Coast. Around 9:56 a.m., the main boat, a 24-foot vessel called the Triton, pushed off the dock. Nolan was on board. So was his best friend, Warren Hudson, along with Jax Spatalo, Morgan Seymour, and the boat's driver, Wyatt Pyron. Other members of the friend group and additional teenagers were on a sister vessel called the Mac Daddy. The 2 boats, plus a few others, planned to ride out together to Horn Island, an uninhabited barrier island about 10 miles off the Mississippi coast that has long been a party spot for local boating crowds. GPS data from the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources, later obtained by CBS News, shows the Triton reached Horn Island by 11:14 a.m. The boats anchored together on the north end of the island. By midday, according to virtually every witness who later spoke on social media, in podcasts, or to the press, the group was doing exactly what you would expect a group of late teenagers to do on an offshore island on a holiday: swimming, eating, drinking, and partying. Multiple witnesses later described heavy drinking that day. So did family members of the friends who were at the dock to see them off in the morning. By mid-afternoon, the group had been on the island for roughly 5 hours. Nolan was talking to a young woman the group calls Katie. The rest of Nolan's friends were not far away, anchored on the Triton, drifting in the water, and trading time between the boats and the beach. Here's where the official story and reality first start to disagree. According to the GPS record, the Triton left Horn Island at 4:31 p.m. on July 4th. Nolan Wells was not on board. That isn't contested by either side.
Here is what the GPS record shows. At 9:56 in the morning on July the 4th, the boat carrying Nolan and his friends left its dock, beginning a day that no one on board could have known would end the way it did. By 11:14, it had reached Horn Island. For several hours afterward, the group stayed together, celebrating the holiday the way so many others were doing that same afternoon along that same stretch of coast. At 4:31 that afternoon, according to data from the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources, the boat left Horn Island. Nolan was not on board. It returned to its original dock, and then, rather than staying there for the night, it kept moving. At 5:52 p.m., the boat traveled into Fort Bayou. By 6:06, it was back at the dock once again.
The four young men on the boat, Hudson, Spatalo, Seymour, and Pyron, have stuck to one version publicly. Repeated to podcasters, defense attorneys, and reporters, Nolan chose to stay behind on the island with Katie by his own free will. They say they asked him to come back. He refused. They left without him because, in their telling, he made it clear he wanted to stay with the girl. His family and their attorneys say that story cannot be true. Also, this story had some problems. The first problem is the phone. Nolan's cell phone was left on the boat. His mom has said publicly, again and again, that Nolan was never apart from his phone. Friends say Nolan decided to leave his phone behind on the Triton because he wanted to stay focused on Katie. Second problem, the keys. Nolan's keys were also on the boat. There's no public statement on which set of keys, but the family has flagged this as additional evidence the friend's story doesn't hold up. Third problem, the boat's next moves. According to the same GPS data, instead of going home after dropping Nolan off, the Triton kept moving for hours. At 5:52 p.m., it traveled into Fort Bayou. By 6:06 p.m., it was back at the original dock. By 7:19 p.m., it had shifted again to the Fort Bayou boat launch, where it was hauled out of the water and trailered overland to a residence in Biloxi owned by Jerry Anderson, named on the CETO call as the membership holder. Reportedly, Wyatt Pyron's grandfather.
Well, Errol, this is important because now we know the exact movement pattern of that boat that took Nolan Wells to the island. Exactly what time, around 11:15 a.m., the boat landed on the island. And then we know that after 5 p.m., that boat, without Nolan Wells on it, traveled a different route and docked in another place, different, actually quite a ways away from where it entered the water that morning. And then we know the route that those young men who were on the boat that took him, that path that took them to the home of the boat's owner. All of this is being scrutinized by law enforcement. So this is a key part of it, because the big question is, what happened to Nolan Wells, and did anyone see him enter the water? That question remains unanswered, Errol.
Why did the boys keep moving a 24-foot boat all evening after allegedly abandoning their friend on an island? The family has asked that question publicly. The friends have not, to date, given a single satisfying answer. Ben Crump, the family's nationally recognized civil rights attorney, who has represented the families of George Floyd, Trayvon Martin, Breonna Taylor, and Emmett Till, has not been subtle about where he lands. Crump's instantly viral line, repeated in press conferences and on TV, has been, what teenager would leave their phone behind if they're going to stay on this island? What teenager wouldn't take their phone? It's not adding up at all. He has called the friends' legal maneuvering a distraction and stressed the family is focused on getting to the truth of what happened to Nolan Wells. Sometime around the same moment the Triton pulled away from the island, the boat's bilge pump failed. Whoever was driving placed an emergency call to CETO, a marine towing company.
We're sinking. Can y'all please come?
And is everybody on board in good health otherwise?
Yeah, everybody's on board.
CETO assistance, Vicky speaking. How can I help you?
Hey, we're at the west tip of Horn, and our bilge pump stopped working. We're sinking. Can y'all please come? We have a membership.
All right, of course. How far is the water coming up, sir? Can you give me a description? Ankles?
What'd
Hello?
you say? Hey.
Yes, how far is the water coming up, sir?
It's coming up. We're just sinking. I don't know. Like we're going down now.
All right. Well, let's get you going. Membership number or phone number listed on that account, sir.
I don't know the phone number. It's either. I think it's. Try that.
All right.
I know we have a membership, like guaranteed. I don't have the tag
unless
on
you
here.
have a membership number or anything, it's okay. I'll get you over to the captain. What's the best phone number to reach you at?
Reach me at 2.
All right. And is everybody on board in good health otherwise?
Yeah, everybody's on board.
All right. Do you need the United States Coast Guard?
What?
Do you need the United States Coast Guard?
No, we do not need that.
All right. All right. Do you have your current GPS coordinates?
Let me go look.
If not, I can send you a text message.
After enhancement, social media users and several independent digital analysts claim they could hear background voices saying, "Is he dead? Nolan, wake up. Check his chest. Jump in and pull the plug, Bart, while you're going. Come on, get up, Nolan." The implication that Nolan was on the boat in distress while the friends made a distress call about a sinking vessel was explosive. If Nolan was on the Triton during the rescue call, then Katie, the island, and the entire "he chose to stay" defense collapse. Digital forensics expert Robert Freed, brought in to vet the recording, pushed back hard. He said the audio is highly distorted. His forensic software was unable to confirm those phrases, and he warned about perception bias, a phenomenon where listeners hear what they've been told to listen for, even when it's not really there. The audio remains debated. The grand jury, presumably, has heard far cleaner versions than anyone online. Around 5 p.m. on Horn Island, about half an hour after the Triton supposedly left, social media accounts and direct messages describe a group of young men almost fighting on the beach. One direct message account alleged that someone was arguing with Nolan and told him, "You're going to spend the rest of your life in prison." A photograph also surfaced, allegedly from the United Cajun Navy aerial search, placing a man matching Nolan's build and clothing on the beach around 4:50 p.m. after the friends say the Triton pulled away.
There is a group of people fighting at 5 p.m. Who are they? The friends say they leave at 4:31. That should be able to be verified through GPS. 5 p.m. Nolan, according to them, is still at Horn Island. Is he? Because by 7:30, witness states Nolan nowhere in sight. So where was he? He wasn't floating in the water. He wasn't on the shore. If he had, hold on, Dave, to Joe Scott Morgan, if he had drowned.
The witnesses in that photograph, to the family's frustration, have not been publicly identified. Have they been interviewed? Have they been polygraphed? The Jackson County Sheriff's Office has not answered those questions publicly. This 5 p.m. altercation, more than any other piece of evidence, is what's turned an apparent drowning into a public fight about race, accountability, and who gets believed when. Later on the night of July 4th, somewhere around midnight, multiple outlets reported, Nolan's mother reported him missing. She used the Life 360 app to check his phone's last location. The phone pinged back the location of one of Nolan's friends, who she called. The family lawyer has since issued preservation notices to the friends' family members and subpoenas to Meta, Snapchat, TikTok, and Life 360 itself for messages, photos, GPS pings, and account metadata. Meanwhile, the United Cajun Navy, a volunteer search and rescue group that became central to this case, launched aerial searches over Horn Island. Then, on the morning of Monday, July 6th, a park ranger spotted a body on the north end of the island at roughly 8:45 a.m. It was Nolan. Jackson County Sheriff John Ledbetter held a press conference that afternoon and initially told reporters the department suspected no foul play. The family publicly rejected the phrase as premature, and Crump hammered it in subsequent interviews. The Mississippi State Medical Examiner completed its autopsy and toxicology testing, but the office has sealed the official state findings pending the grand jury. The family commissioned an independent autopsy conducted by Dr. Roger Mitchell, a forensic pathologist based in Washington, D.C. According to criminal forensics expert Joseph Scott Morgan, Nolan's body was severely decomposed after spending 2 days in the hot July Gulf Coast waters. A major point of controversy in the case emerged when the state medical examiner's office kept the neck organs for further testing, leaving key throat parts missing that were needed to rule strangulation in or out. Additionally, cold case expert Cheryl McCullum pointed out that an intense physical struggle typically leaves noticeable injuries, yet Nolan showed no defensive wounds, fractures, or knuckle marks. Pathologists did notice an unusual rectangular patch of deep red tissue on the back of Nolan's head, but the severe post-mortem decay made a final judgment impossible. Because of these missing throat organs, lack of struggle marks, and overall decomposition, the official cause and manner of death were ultimately listed as undetermined. Undetermined. For weeks, Katie remained completely silent, despite being the last person to speak with Nolan on Horn Island before he vanished. She was visiting the island with her own group on her father's boat, the Bertram. That silence finally broke when her sister posted a public account on social media describing what Katie experienced that afternoon. According to the sister, Katie did hang out with Nolan, but she believed he was returning to his friend's boat and even heard them encouraging him to join them. Katie assumed they would never leave him behind before she eventually departed for the mainland on a separate vessel. This narrative directly conflicts with the friends' official story, in which they claim Nolan refused to board the boat because he chose to stay behind with Katie, with two witnesses offering entirely contradictory versions of Nolan's final moments. Both accounts simply cannot be true.
Ben Crump, representing the Wells family, says Katie's account of that final conversation is specific and hasn't wavered, and it conflicts directly with what Nolan's friends have said. According to Katie, Nolan told her he was planning to rejoin his friends and get back on their boat before they left the island. According to the friends themselves, Nolan told them the opposite, that he intended to stay behind on the island with Katie, entirely by his own choice, in his own words. Both statements cannot be accurate.
The family and attorney Benjamin Crump have repeatedly highlighted this massive divide, arguing that when key details fail to align, the entire official timeline becomes deeply suspect. Consequently, Katie's story has now emerged as the single biggest discrepancy in the entire public record. In early August, TMZ obtained brand new video of the Triton pulling away from Horn Island that afternoon. The footage shows the 24-foot boat trying to start, with roughly 7 people visible on or around the vessel. That visual evidence is now in the public record. It is grainy, it is not conclusive on its own, but it does match the family's claim that Nolan was simply not on the boat when it left. The implication is clear. The boat left without Nolan, regardless of whether Nolan chose to stay or was left behind.
This new video shows the boat that Nolan's friends were on when they left the island. This is the boat that Nolan arrived at Horn Island on July 4th.
Same friends.
Same friends. Seven people, which is what we heard them describe on the call to the tow company. And they're all on the boat there. This is as they are trying to get it started.
And there's no Nolan in sight.
Right. And the 7 people you can see on there, Nolan is not one of them.
And I think it's important to say, and you said it, but I want to reinforce it. That's at the beginning of the trip, so it's not as if...
No, this is at the end of the day.
Shortly after Nolan's body was found, the case gained widespread national attention and support from high-profile celebrities. Director Tyler Perry paid for the funeral expenses, while director Spike Lee attended the service and donated $100,000 to a GoFundMe for the family. To help speed up the slow investigation, Perry and Reverend Al Sharpton offered a combined $100,000 reward for information, with additional financial backing coming from Spike Lee and NFL quarterback Colin Kaepernick. On July 15, 2026, Christine and Elmore Wansley, Nolan's mother and stepfather, sat down face-to-face with Angel Myers McElrath, the Jackson County District Attorney. It was the first direct meeting with the DA's office since the body was found. Attorney Ben Crump told reporters afterward that the DA committed to take the case to a grand jury once complete. On July 31, 2026, the state medical examiner's official autopsy report was completed, but the DA has elected to keep the results sealed until the grand jury reviews them. The DA has been explicit in public addresses. A grand jury referral is not a verdict. It is not an indictment. It is not a decision that a crime has been committed. It is a procedural step, a panel of citizens being asked to review the evidence and decide whether probable cause exists to file charges. For the family, the grand jury path is the first moment in 5 weeks where they have had any official process to point to. For the friends' attorneys, J. Tyler Cox and Edward Andrew Haltick, it is also the moment that determines whether their clients will face criminal charges or civil litigation. The friends on the Triton have hired their own legal team. They have set up a $166,000 Give, Send, Go defense fund to fight potential wrongful death civil suits and to file their own defamation suits against influencers who have named them publicly. They have publicly threatened lawsuits against the family and social media commentators. They have, separately, returned to Horn Island with their own attorneys to do independent walkthroughs and to document local currents. The family has rejected all of that as a distraction, Crump's word, and is demanding the truth come first. The grand jury is now in motion. The witnesses who were on the beach in that United Cajun Navy photo at 4:50 p.m. remain unidentified. The Bertram occupants from the 5 p.m. altercation remain unidentified. The phone that was left on the boat has not been publicly described in detail by the family, who say they have not been given full access to its contents. A kid went to a boat party on the 4th of July. He didn't come home. Every adult in that story now has lawyers. The state of Mississippi has a sealed file. The internet has 100 theories. And an 18-year-old's family is still waiting for someone in authority to just tell them what happened to their son. This case remains in the spotlight because several critical details simply do not add up. The Friends claims that Nolan voluntarily stayed on a remote island without his phone or keys contradict Katie's conflicting account. Additionally, witnesses reported a mysterious beach altercation around 5 p.m., supported by a photo placing someone like Nolan there after his friends supposedly left. Suspicion has grown further because the state retained Nolan's neck organs during the autopsy, fueling widespread theories. Compounded by national debates over race and justice in Mississippi, new developments continue to emerge weekly, including federal arrests over threats and an upcoming grand jury. As the family waits for real answers, the public remains captivated by unanswered questions surrounding the fight, the missing phone, and the undetermined cause of death.